And every 4 years, we're made to feel like we're playing this great role, this great democratic practice, in decision making, where we celebrate electing these leaders who rule over us. I mean, how does power really function in our society?
But there's very good studies of this from mainstream political science, nothing on the edges. So one of the main topics that's studied in academic political science is the relation between people's attitudes and public policy. And it's a pretty straightforward study. You see public policy, there's very good polling evidence on what people think about things. So for example, for about 40 years, a considerable majority of the public has thought that taxes should go up on the rich, taxes go down on the rich. A substantial part of the public, often a big majority, thinks that we ought to have a national health care program. Nothing, impossible. In fact, when the press discusses this, they call it politically impossible, meaning the pharmaceutical companies won't accept it, the insurance companies won't accept it, and so on. So it basically doesn't matter what the public thinks. About 70% of the public, lowest 70% on the income scale, are pretty much disenfranchised. Their attitudes have no detectable influence on the policies of their own representatives. As you move up the scale, you get a bit more influence. When you get to the top, policy's made, and the top can mean a fraction of 1%. So it's kind of a plutocracy with democratic forms. And the elections, by now it's almost become a joke, but it's always been true that campaign financing plays a very substantial role in not only who's elected, but what the policies are. That goes back 100 years. The great campaign manager 100 years ago, Mark Hanna, was asked once, what are the important things that you have to to run a campaign? He said there are three things. First one's money. The second one's money. And I forget what the third one is. And pretty much that's true. With the current reactionary Supreme Court, it's just gone out of sight. Campaign spending is, the billions and billions of dollars.
Sure. So our political system at this point has been captured by huge corporate interests and moneyed interests. So the way you counteract that is you give every citizen 100 democracy dollars that can only be donated to a political campaign. And that would wash out the corporate money, because $100 times even a minority of citizens is a much higher sum than all of the money that's being spent on lobbyists and the rest of it. So that one move ends up recapturing democracy and making it so that if someone like me appeals to 10,000 people, I get $1 million. Whereas right now, I have to appeal to 10,000 people and then go get the $1 million from some rich people. That's the real process. So if you can actually unify the money and the people, then you can fix democracy. It's not that hard.